Oh, I've been waiting for this call for a long, long time. I believe this is Keys. Is that right?
Yep, them.
Okay, so you got a hand here from someplace in Florida, right?
Yeah, it's at Oxford Downs.
Okay, is that in Central Florida or?
Yeah, it's like kind of near the Villages, if you know where that is.
I've heard of the Villages. Do you get a lot of retirees playing in the games?
It's like all retirees pretty much.
Oh, you should go. They do allow some people like under 40 to live in the Villages. I was watching a pickleball video about it. You should consider that. And if you get that little community, you can get yourself a golf cart. Live it up. All right. So Oxford Downs. What size of the game are you playing?
It's a 5-5 game with the $5 ante and 1,500 cap.
5-5 game with a $5 ante from each player.
No, big blind ante.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh, that makes more sense. All right. So small. So an ante. All right. So 5-5. And would you say 2K cap?
1.5K.
Oh, so this sounds like an awesome daytime game.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I can't even imagine. You're probably always the youngest guy at the table.
by like 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And how deep are you for this hand?
We're 1.9K effective.
All right. So 1.9K effective Oxford Downs. Daytime?
Daytime. Yep.
All right. Okay.
So I'm under the gun with Ace 5 of spades, and I raised to 25.
Okay.
+1 calls, and then small blind, who's I guess like what I'd classify as a bad reg. He 3 bets to 105.
So you've got a guy behind. So you open a 25 +1 call, small blind, 3 bets to 105. You have stack depth. Seems like a pretty good spot here to throw in the 4-bet. If everyone was very deep here, I could see sometimes call, like if you had 7-8 suited here, it should always be a 4-bet fold. I just wonder what suited aces here could sometimes be called here in the middle.
I don't really remember how deep I was with +1. I know at this time I'd like 6,500 in my stack, so I might have been deep with him. And he was also pretty bad, but I think I'd call with like Ace 10 suited or Ace Jack suited, and then go with 4 bets with like Ace 5, Ace 4, and then some other 4-bet bluffs.
Yep. Okay. So you 4-bet?
Yeah, I 4-bet to 275, and I think that's like kind of a little bit too small, especially with the call in between and the stack depth that we have. But I guess I wasn't thinking too much about it at the time.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the goal here sometimes is to get immediate folds, right?
I mean, yeah, he's going to have folds. Like I've seen him 3-bet with suited connectors, and this guy's like pretty scared of me, so I'm not really sure that he's gonna want to play like a huge pot with me with like 7-6 suited or whatever.
Right. No, it's interesting in how he would construct a 3-betting. I mean, usually an OMC isn't going to 3-bet like 7-6 suited from the small blind as a squeeze, but I tend to agree with you that the purpose of doing this is to get some immediate folds. I mean, if you think that there are some immediate folds to go in 275, then fine. Usually
there's folds here. Like he's not an OMC. He's like a 40s Asian guy.
Okay. All right. So you 4-bet to 275. Does the guy to your left get out of the way?
Yeah, he gets out of the way, and then the small blind calls.
Okay. So 575 or something like that, right?
Yep, 575 to the flop, and it comes 9 of spades, 3 whatever, 2 of whatever. Let's say like club diamond.
All right. So 9 of spades, 3 of hearts, deuce of diamonds. You flop a wheel draw with a backdoor flush draw.
Right.
Okay.
So he checks. I go 175, and he calls.
So obviously pretty small in a 4-bet pot, right? Like almost like 25%. That's probably theoretical. Although I will say though, and you're probably in some of the solver and sim streets more often than I am, if the range is very, very tight in a 4-bet pot, obviously you're supposed to be c-betting almost 100% of the time in a 4-bet pot in these types of situations, unless it's like the worst types of boards, like, who knows, like 9-10 jack, like monotone, you have some checks and stuff like that. Here, for this type of sizing, you can c-bet, 100. The thing that's interesting here though, is that are you allowed to take large sizing though on a board like this, right? Because it's so low and the ranges are supposed to be tight.
So a lot of the time, like c-bet sizing in a 4-bet pot will kind of be constructed around making ace king indifferent. Same with like check raise bluffs.
Mhm.
And ace king is not indifferent to this size, but this guy, I don't think he's going to be defending wide enough. Like I did look at this hand in the solver a while ago, and I remember it defending pretty wide on the flop and even on the turn. But, just kind of exploitatively, I'm going to take the small size because he's not going to find any check raise bluffs here.
So what did it say for this hand for sizing? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly, but my instinct would be that it would allow for some half pot sizing.
Okay. So, and I 100% agree with you that there's just, I mean, I don't know how many check raises there are supposed to be for protection in a 4-bet pot off the top of my head, but there's definitely in 3-bet pots, and live players don't find it. So whenever you're in a situation, anybody watching this where it's close, you tend to, in position, want to do more betting than maybe even what is optimal, because when you sort of live node lock the non-check raise frequency, only good things can happen because you realize so well. So you bet 175, okay.
Yep, and he calls.
Yep.
And then the turn is an offsuit jack, so.
All right, so no backdoor. I'm gonna put jack of clubs. Okay.
All right, so we still have a gut shot, but we didn't turn any additional equity.
Okay.
And he checks, and I decide to go 425 into 925.
So you bet 425 into 925. Okay.
Yeah. So I was just wondering what your thoughts were on this size, because I had like particular goals when taking it.
The only thing, so I think if you're deeper, like say you started with 3,000 or something like that, you could definitely go for a larger sizing here on turn. The problem with your stack size is, say, for example, you went 2/3 here instead of 425 and went like 650, and then he called again, then the pot would be like 225, and you guys, or 2250, and you would have like less than like, it just doesn't leave as much money for you to bluff on the river. So you have to watch your sizing in spots like this, because if you don't, so I actually don't mind your sizing because I want to leave enough where there's some fold equity, you know what I'm saying, at the end. But I think if you're deeper, I would probably go for at least 2/3 sizing on a disconnected card. So this is where keeping hyper aware of how much you have left, I think, comes into play a lot.
Yeah, so with my sizing, I was just trying to basically like fold out
Ace
something.
size.
Yeah, ace king, ace queen, that backdoor, and they're supposed to like call a lot to the turn bet with the size that I took, but I don't think that guy's finding any.
So you go 425, okay.
Yep, and he calls.
So going with, before we get to the river, now that you don't think he finds those calls that maybe he should, or to this type of sizing, you're left with him having at least pairs, right, for the most part?
Yeah, I mean, I doubt he's going to have any ace king at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So the river comes in offsuit queen, which is a pretty shitty card to try to bluff on, and was what I thought at the time.
You think so?
Well, I think that he's going to have a lot of queens and jacks.
Right. So when talking about like 10, right, it's less likely, of course, that he has queens now that the queen comes. And I still think that he probably so I don't know how he would necessarily like three bet calling like 8s, 9s, and 10s, things like that. And then obviously you have absolutely no showdown value if it goes check check here at the end. I don't necessarily know if I agree with you, Keys, in the sense that this is necessarily a bad card. Here's my thinking: less combos of queens, and you've got what, 1,200 left. I guess at this point it probably doesn't matter. I was thinking if you had more stack depth, you don't even have to go like crazy large. You're trying to get him to fold off. Of course, 9s is a set. I guess you're trying to get him to fold off 8s and 10s. Kind of, it's interesting how he constructs.
I don't know that he threw 8s.
So then it would just be 10s then?
Yeah. And also he might even fold 10s on the turn.
Like right, this guy, you think so? To your sizing?
I also had like a very good image at this point. I was up like 5K on the day and was just kind of running over the table. But yeah, he doesn't like to put money in without a good hand for sure.
Yeah, interesting.
Not one big hero calls.
So he checks again?
He checks again, and at this point, I was debating whether or not to go for it. And I figured he could have kings, he could have queens, he could have jacks, and I ended up checking back.
Yeah, so, when you look at this on paper and you don't really look at the the fact that this is a 4-bet pot and all that stuff that we talked about and the ranges, and if he's not 3-betting like a hand like 8s plus, you might be like, oh, how can you not bluff? Like it's an overcard to top pair. But I think I can probably get on board with Keys saying he still has like kings, jacks, queens. Really, what are you trying to get him off of here? And it would be tens and maybe like some sort of hand that had a jack in it that called the flop with backdoors if he 3-bets off suited broadways, or like a hand like ace jack suited. Could you ever get on board with betting something stupid like 500-600? I mean, that's one of the first things I was thinking about. Where you give yourself, if say you go 1/3 here and you go 600, and it just needs to work like 25% of the time, and it looks very, very value-y.
I actually didn't think about that. I could see it.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of what my gut was there. And again, maybe if he's scared of you and he wants to like let you value bet and bluff, then he probably has a lot of slow plays here. Getting to the river, like nines and jacks aren't always going to like just check raise, especially if it's a rainbow board. So he definitely has some strong hands. You're not going to get him to fold kings. I just wonder how often tens or some sort of like jack X or something like that.
I could get him to maybe fold kings, but I wasn't sure.
At the end here with like an all-in, I don't know.
Potentially.
Yeah.
He wouldn't fold aces. There's no ace folding that. But
the other thing too, I know we sort of washed over this a little bit, because I'm assuming the turn brought in rainbow, right?
Right.
Okay. So if the turn brings in a backdoor, then he might have some more, a few more like ace X types of backdoor flush combinations that might get there that were peeled, or some sort of Broadway that might get there that were peeled because it picked up backdoors. And I think you probably should be more apt to take a small size bluff. This is rainbow, so it's slightly different, but it is one subtle thing. So do you checked it back?
Yeah, I checked it back and he had kings.
Okay. I have no problem. I mean, we're not trying to be results oriented, but I don't have a problem with your check back. If you knew he had kings, would you have gone? Like, say he turned his hand over, would you have gone for it?
I actually don't really know. Like, I think I could probably get him to fold kings.
Well, that's an interesting one.
Just taking into account image, the fact that this guy's not like really a station, and what do I have besides ace king that he double blocks that I'm taking a triple barrel bluff? 1.9K effective at 5-5.
Listen, everything you're saying is 100% correct. Sometimes it boils down to the fact that the guy just has an overpair and he's just not going to fold.
I mean, he's the type of guy, like he's not going to just station down blindly with an overpair, but he's not a complete nit either.
Yeah. And again, it kind of comes back to also like he protects. This is sometimes what you have to do if you're in Keys opponent's shoes. Especially if you're up against a good winning player that can effectively value bet and also bluff, you are supposed to take some strong hands in a given situation like this and just call down with them. Like if he had nines or jacks, if I was your opponent, I would be slow playing in this situation all the way to the end. If he's unbalanced and he doesn't slow play, that means that it turns around to you, Keys, where you can probably over bluff him because of the fact that now the only real strong hand that he has is queens, and it's less likely because a queen hit. So if you take out nines and jacks, then you probably can do more bluffing here in your spot. But if he does slow play some strong hands to the end, then you just can't blindly just barrel off.
Yeah, I mean, I think he might like have some check raises with like kings or aces to try to protect or whatever, when queens too on the flop. But I don't think he's going to be like fast playing a set here.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it.